With their recent update, have iRacing just managed to kill one of the more popular vehicles in the simulator? That is what we're going to be talking about in this video. Remember, you have to be a subscriber so you can unsubscribe when we upset you. So make sure you get that sorted, and if you want to, you can also click the like button, but I'm not telling you what to do. So for the most part, iRacing's recent update is actually a really nice update. Loads of features, loads of updated cars, some new cars, some free stuff, some new things to buy. It's not a bad update. We could look into more depth the other parts of it in another video. What I think is really interesting though is the updates and changes to the LMP2 car, and also how this highlights the weird behaviour that iRacing has to certain content in the simulator, and also the weird way in which iRacing treats some of its really hardcore fans or little micro user bases that occur in the sim. If you don't really know iRacing, it's got lots of different cars, lots of different tracks and lots of different series. So many that it's not really feasible for someone to drive everything reasonably to a high level. Some people try, but what you tend to find is you get people attaching themselves to specific series and specific cars. Dedicated GT3 drivers, dedicated MX-5 drivers, dedicated Skippy drivers, and that's literally all they will play. So iRacing for some people is basically just one car and one series in iRacing. And then you tend to get certain vehicles in the simulator that really get quite large dedicated user bases. I would say historically the original Radical, the F3 car, the Skippy, and for sure this LMP2 car. Now what's really weird is that iRacing tend to completely screw over those people that are big fans of that older content that they've got used to, and they're having lots of fun with it. The Radical is a really good example of this. You add the RX-8, really good, really fun. Maybe the handling was a bit weird, but it was actually really great fun to drive, really great races, always populated. And then they released the SR10, and that car's terrible, it's dead, but it also killed the previous car, so now there's basically no Radical racing in iRacing. Now the iRacing murderers are coming for the LMP2 car. I would argue they'd already started. In the past, the LMP2 car had loads of draft, which made for way more interesting driving with the LMP2 and lots more overtaking than you'd otherwise get. You can argue whether or not that's realistic, and maybe they have to change it to make it more realistic, but a lot of the LMP2 drivers will agree that the higher draft prior to the update ages ago now was actually way more fun for racing. They got rid of that, and but people sort of accepted it. But now, with the latest update that they've done and the changes they've made to the car, maybe based off what's realistic in some ways, but we'll talk about that in a bit, but with the changes that they've done, the car has now become really kind of sloppy, muted and vague, and kind of goes against, I think, what a lot of people really enjoyed driving the LMP2 car for in the first place, which was that it was quite forgiving, but also quite a pokey car, relatively speaking, for iRacing, and just had really nice dynamics to it. The TC stopped it from sliding around too much. It was already one of the easiest cars, I think, to drive in iRacing. But now they've basically turned it into an ice cream cone that's melting as you drive it around the track. And I think they've changed it in a way that's still arbitrary, because it still doesn't drive like any vehicle that you see in any other racing simulator. And in a way that I think hardcore iRacers won't like. Your average iRacer will just be confused over, and anyone that, as I say, played an LMP2 car in AC1, LMU, even Automobilista 2, they'll just be like, hang on a minute, this does not drive like any LMP2 car we've experienced in any other video game. So what on earth is going on? Now, I think iRacing will argue, guys, we've got to change the spec of it and adjust it so it fits in with the other series, and you know, now we've got the data when we made it more realistic, and maybe in iRacing land it is more realistic. So I can sympathise with the developer and why they've made the decisions they've made, even if the end result is completely bananas. And look, I'll be fair as well. I think you still could have a lot of fun racing this, especially sort of on the general iRacing scheme of things with iRacing vehicles. I think you could still generally enjoy it. It's just really bizarre to just so arbitrarily change something that I think most people were happy with. Now, furthermore, what they've done is they've killed off, knocked off, removed, ripped off the fixed LMP2 series that they were running, which was a really nice separate series with these prototype cars that pretty much always had healthy sized grids and meant that the fan base of this type of vehicle could get a decent sized grid with a decent amount of cars. One of the big issues of the sort of IMSA series and the larger series is, one, a lot of the races are multi-class, so you end up with, in some cases, hardly anybody else of your class to race against, so you're basically just driving against 4 cars with some other traffic on the road, which can be fun, but, you know, they don't always design the grids too well in terms of how they're populated, so you don't actually get a decent race with people. But 2, a lot of the endurance races are much longer races and much more of a commitment and really a different type of driving that's not necessarily suited to one of the really big pros of the LMP2 car, which was that it was a really nice nippy prototype, actually quite suited to sort of 20-minute races and fun jumping stuff, especially when you considered how sort of pliable, nippy but safe the handling of the vehicle was. So it's just really weird. They genuinely had something from a gameplay perspective that was really quite good and fun, and once again, just like the Radical and just like some other vehicles, they've killed it off. So you've got people that have subscribed to a game, they're enjoying the game, and they've just, it's like, oh well, yeah, sorry, we've arbitrarily changed it, deal with it. Now the thing is, if it was genuinely, you know, a super duper realistic version of the LMP2 car, and, you know, it fundamentally drove in a realistic way, not the magical iRacing way, I think I would be like, oh yeah, no, that makes sense. But at the end of the day, as I say, the handling of the car is just really arbitrary. It doesn't visually look like any real-world car that drives, and it doesn't drive like any other LMP2 car that you've got in other simulators, which are well known to have more realistic tyre models than iRacing. So it's just weird. It's weird. I'm not resisting change here, guys. I'm totally open to change, and as I say, I think I could probably still enjoy driving this, mostly because I like iRacing for the voice chat. And we'll have to see what it's like with the future series and how it all pans out. Maybe it'll all come together. But I am very much getting the vibe from this that I got with the Radical SR8, which was, it was such a fantastic car to drive, so fun with so many people in the races, and then just, that's it, killed off, done. Replaced with a worse car. Replaced with a car that died within like a month. So I don't know. I mean, look, at least this hasn't been replaced with a car, so at least it's still kind of there. So we'll have to see what happens. It'll be really interesting, actually, to hear from your guys' comments on this video. Those of you that are fans of this LMP2 car, and if you sort of agree with me, or if you think I'm insane, or what your perspective is on it. But from the people I've received messages from already and talked to about this, they don't seem very happy. They seem even more disgruntled than me when it comes to iRacing. So they must be well annoyed. And there's people that have practiced this car to do endurance racing and were really looking forward to it. And it's like, hang on a minute, what have you done, iRacing? Oh dear. Anyway, I will say as well, I'm trying to be, you know, fair on this. I think you do get the aspect of tyre temperature stuff when it's colder, and then the grip taking time to come to the car and stuff, and that's just a change. That's not really here nor there, really. Like, once you're up to speed and driving after a few laps, that's where the sort of fundamentals really matter. I quite like having tyres be a bit crap and cold to start with, because I think it makes the starts of races or pit exits and all those kind of things more interesting, and causes people to make mistakes, which then you as a driver that's paying attention and not distracted, you can then take advantage of that. So I think that's an interesting dynamic. And I don't think people are really complaining about that component of it. Well, yes. Is it the end of the LMP2 car? What we've also got to talk about here, guys, is the new the hypercar changes and what's going on with that. Now, funnily enough, I actually quite enjoy how they handle. Maybe they're a bit mental, and again, maybe they're not very realistic. But my thing is like, if it's not realistic, and I don't think iRacing is very realistic, generally speaking. If it's not going to be realistic, as long as it's fun, I don't really care. I'm not that nitpicky. And the thing that quantifies fun for me is, can you have good overtaking, a bit of draft? Does it make sense on the tracks they pick? Do the cars actually respond to input nicely? Are they bitey? Do they have a little bit of controllable slip? You know, the force feedback tell you what's going on. To me, as long as it ticks those boxes, I'm fine as can be. But the latest update has really upset some of the esports drivers, it would seem, and people that are comparing sort of absolute speeds of vehicles and other aspects. Oh dear. I'm just really glad I'm not a sim racing developer. But I had fun, week 13 driving this. Daytona, absolutely fantastic track as well. Look at this move, up the inside. Bob's your uncle, Fanny's your aunt. Snuck it through. iRacing supposedly have also improved netcode, which it did seem when we were driving actually that things were maybe a little bit better. I'm not sure how much of that was netcode or other things, but we did seem to be able to drive a little bit more aggressive and not be too badly affected, which was nice. But we need to test that out more. We'll do more live streaming to really, and more driving into people to really get a good feel for how these changes have taken place. I'm going to need to put at least sort of 20 hours into iRacing to really gather my thoughts fully. But hopefully you found this video on the murder of the LMP2 interesting. If you did, make sure you click the like button. You can subscribe, so you can unsubscribe as I said at the beginning. But thank you very much for watching. Happy tea drinking. Take care, and goodbye, everyone.